Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first here, hazardous weather graphic. We've got a winter storm watch out here. They're over toward the Hyder-Stewart area. Actually, it's for specifically Hyder, and that's kicks into effect Monday, tomorrow, and continues through tomorrow night, and that's for possible heavy snow to occur in that area, and looking at possibly 11 to 16 inches falling in Hyder tomorrow and tomorrow night, and it looks to be heavy wet snow as it looks right now, which makes it cling to things a little better. Anyway, no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere else in the state coming up for tonight, tomorrow, and probably into Tuesday as well, with the not much in the way of any big storms affecting in fact, no big storms affecting anywhere in the interior. And the Aleutians, same thing in the Bering Sea. Satellite imagery, we've got one system here hanging back over the eastern Aleutians. That was the original low. A new one here formed and trying to push up toward Kodiak Island. Did push a front, as you can see, northward today. That really put the squeeze on the atmosphere along the North Gulf Coast in across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, with storm warnings, as well as Shelikof Strait had, I think, storm force wind gusts in there today, and winds gusting as high as 60 to 65 miles an hour across the Barren Islands and into Kamishak Bay at Augustine Island, and up around 60 miles an hour, peak wind gusts at Middleton Island today, and some light rain starting to show up along the south coast of the Panhandle, and also an increase in the winds out there, maybe 30, 40 miles an hour along the coastline. Otherwise, up in the interior, not much going on. In fact, kind of a dry day for the eastern Gulf Coast today. Only 1/100 of an inch of precipitation fell at Seward, for example, and then there was the usual 1/2 inch to an inch around Portage Valley area. And otherwise, not too much. Cook Inlet, mostly clear sky, or cloudy skies, but there was clearing up here to the north and pretty nice conditions all the way to the Arctic coast. Have a little bit of a weak trough right through here, kind of a boundary layer between the cold air back to the west and this warmer, milder easterly flow. So there is a little bit of precipitation with that feature. And then northwest winds on the backside of this low center kicking up pretty good. Nikolsky earlier today had a peak wind gust of 68 miles per hour. And this afternoon, King Cove, winds had increased in winds gusts had increased to 56 miles per hour. So winds picking up along the Alaska Peninsula and starting to come down now for the eastern Aleutians. Also some rain, about 1/10 of an inch falling on Alaska, 2/10 of an inch at Cold Bay. Otherwise, heavier amounts in across, from southern Kenai Peninsula with this front, kind of a narrow band of moderate to heavy rain from the southern Kenai Peninsula into the Kamishak Bay and Iliamna Lake area. On the chart here, you can see the front right in that area, and hovering at about 1/4 of an inch of precipitation today, as did Port Graham on the Kenai Peninsula. But over toward Lake Iliamna and Kamishak Bay, a little over an inch in some locations there, and then it becomes lighter back here to the west. And then this trough with the snow showers right through here, tighter gradient, gusty winds there across, as I mentioned, for the eastern Aleutians. But you see higher pressure up over the central Aleutians today with some clearing, light winds there, that ahead of the next system that was increasing the wind and rain again this afternoon over the western Aleutian areas, mostly west of even Kiska Island, out mainly Shimia and Attu Islands. But tonight, that will push eastward. The front will kind of elongate out, and that'll increase the wind and rain to the Adak and then Atka area tonight. The low center's tracking south of the Aleutians, and that'll help mitigate the wind speeds a little bit out there. Ridging here progresses slowly east, well, into the eastern Aleutians, so May see some clearing with light winds tonight for the Fox Island areas. Still a narrow band of snow showers along this boundary here that extends from the Alaska Peninsula northwest there to near the Pribilofs and the west side of St. Lawrence Island. Gamble, for example, while Savunga may escape any snow. And the interior stays clear, dry, or mostly clear and dry. Could be some lower clouds in through here over the eastern interior areas. And then still the North Gulf Coast, kind of unsettled here. Periods of light rain continues for western Prince William Sound, south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, but a break coming across Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet there with the low center here slowly weakening. That front pushes into the Panhandle, continues, will increase the rain this evening and continue overnight tonight. Nothing heavy, winds not all that big a deal, and rain will extend back along the eastern North Gulf Coast and then really probably taper off, but won't end completely for western Prince William Sound. Otherwise, not much else going on. And then for tomorrow, actually another front pulls in here. It looks like the same one, but it's not. It's one of these troughs that come in, kind of develop into another frontal boundary. The original one kind of up through here and just really washes out, but leaves some snow showers up there in the Yukon. Otherwise, same sort of pattern, rain through tomorrow, light rain. Looks like the heaviest amounts will be sliding in to the south across the Queen Charlotte Islands there, and that means it'll be lighter rain up over the southeast coast. And still rain or snow depending on the elevation here along the North Gulf Coast, but really not too far inland, nothing past the coast range. Still a threat of some rain and snow showers on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, mostly south of Pointilla. And Kodiak Island, showery, but this low weakening and sliding northeastward there. Definitely keep it unsettled there. And this trough pulling a little farther to the west, but still gives a threat of some light snow to the Pribilofs. And on Tuesday, that low center tracks eastward here, about 968 millibars, and the front lifting up toward Kodiak Island once again, so increasing you'll have showers here in between this weakening feature along the North Gulf Coast, which will bring rain and showers there into the Panhandle. And this is the moisture that's going to prompt the winter storm warning, actually the front, but that will continue in toward Hyder. In fact, a little cooler even up over the Klondike Highway areas, a little cooler air, so you could see some snow from Haines on up to Skagway, and again, just showers along the North Gulf Coast. A little windier here over the eastern and northeast interior areas. You can see a tighter gradient up there, and also a chance of light snow and flurries for the Tok Northway areas. Otherwise, rain and snow showers possible. Mountainous terrain of south central Alaska. Not too bad, Bristol Bay, dry with some clearing, and right on the edge of precipitation here for the Alaska Peninsula. While, again, Arctic coast could be another VFR, mostly clear day there with increasing easterly winds with tighter gradient. And the northwest winds, that looks like good for 25 gusts, 45, 50 miles an hour there, especially the windier areas of the Fox Islands with rain and snow showers and snowfall levels gradually lowering, scattered snow showers for the Pribilof Islands. Taking a look at the forecast lows for tonight, anywhere from 5 to 20 below zero here, northeast interior to all the way down to Northway and Tok with the 0 degree isotherm right into the Copper River Basin. Otherwise, mid to upper 20s, south central Alaska, teens, Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, and lower 30s for Bristol Bay, and mid 30s, lower to mid 30s for the Aleutians, single numbers Arctic coast, and upper 20s to upper 30s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow down that way will be in the mid 30s to lower 40s, and near 40 areas of the North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage, staying near or just below freezing for the highs, and about 10 for the Copper River Basin. Mid to upper 30s, Bristol Bay, lower 40s, Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians, single numbers Arctic coast, and staying low below zero over the eastern interior up into the Yukon Flats area with Eagle looking at a high right near zero, as well as Galena. High tomorrow, 0, 25 over at Nome, and 31 at Gamble, and see a 36 there at St. Paul. And the lows for Tuesday morning, 5 below to 5 above for the Arctic coast, and probably a little more below zero on the north slope into the Arctic Village area, and the lows 10 to 20 below again over the eastern interior, and about a little below zero now for the Copper River Basin. Teens for the Matanuska Valley, Susitna Valley, lower 20s here for northern Cook Inlet, mid to upper 20s down south with mid 30s for Kodiak Island, and upper 20s for your lows on for the northern Panhandle, and upper 30s south, followed by highs in the mid 30s in the north to lower 40s south there. Otherwise, single number central interior to a little below zero over in the northeast, with areas south of the Alaska Range in the mid-20s to lower 30s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic here for Monday morning. Zone of IFR here with one boundary from south of St. Lawrence Island on down again along that trough actually, which was a boundary to the Alaska Peninsula there. Looks like VFR for the Fox Islands. Next front bringing IFR into the central Aleutians and some IFR, central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and some patches here over the Yukon Flats and the 40-mile country, otherwise VFR in the interior, some marginal VFR persisting up along and on the east side of the western Alaska Range. IFR holding there, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound, eastward along the North Gulf Coast to Yakutat and southeast coast there. IFR in the south and over toward the eastern border, farther to the north. In the afternoon, that pattern pretty much stays the same there for the Panhandle. Narrow band, looks like some IFR hung up right in the coast range there, then mostly VFR for the Copper River Basin. And still these areas of IFR here in the 40-mile country to probably not quite up to Eagle, and then over the Yukon Flats there along the Yukon River. And less IFR there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, VFR from the North Slope, Brooks Range, all the way down into Cook Inlet in the east side of the Kenai Peninsula. Some good VFR out here over the southeast Bering Sea, Bristol Bay, right on up into Norton Sound, and the Chukchi Sea. For Tuesday morning, that holds VFR here, Chukchi Sea, down until you get to St. Lawrence Island. With the marginal VFR, looks like on the south shore there, right on down to Nunivak Island. And then VFR trying to get into the Pribilofs. Otherwise, a lot of marginal VFR for the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Narrow band to IFR there, say for False Pass, maybe King Cove. And still some IFR along Kodiak Island, not quite reaching the Kenai Peninsula. And marginal for the North Gulf Coast and IFR southern Panhandle. And for Tuesday afternoon, marginal VFR here for the southeast coast about sums it up, as well as the North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, and Kodiak Island got some IFR there from about Chiniak Bay down to Trinity Islands with marginal VFR Kamishak Bay. VFR still holding long and off the coast here, but definitely not anywhere close to the Pribilofs and splitting St. Lawrence Island in two. Good VFR over the interior, still some lower stuff here on the east side and possible marginal conditions on the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, another VFR day coming up for tomorrow. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, that's going to be on the eastern entrance, both passes there, VFR out the west end. And for Rainy, optimistically, I'll go VFR. There'll be clouds around, but they should be high enough to keep it VFR, windy VFR. Isabel looks kind of marginal tomorrow. And then optimistically, I'm going to go VFR from Antasta as well. Again, clouds around. And for Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR, IFR to a little bit lesser extent than what you've had here on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, starting out IFR, improving to marginal in and throughout the afternoon. Freezing levels here, about 2,000 feet in the west. That southerly flow here coming up the west side of the ridge. It's farther to the east there. So not as high as a week ago. 2,000 feet here right along the coast of the Panhandle, 6,000 feet Queen Charlotte's, 2,000 feet Central Aleutians. Looking at icing, that front pushing in and eastward, we've got an area of considerable moderate, a couple areas here, Fox Islands, and then up along in advance of the front as it lifts north of the Central Aleutians. And then some areas of very isolated, considerable moderate, rime or mixed icing here for the North Gulf Coast to maybe Fognak Island, northern Panhandle, but the heavier stuff looks like it's going to slip on by to the south. And for the jet stream, that's associated with this wave here that's kicking in, that 10-knot jet max, but it looks like it'll stay south of the Panhandle. Otherwise, ridging really through much of the interior from the Yukon. And for 9,000 feet, 25 to 30 knot southeast winds, 15 to 20 over the Panhandle, 15 to 25 in the interior, and stronger out with that storm out west. And let me back it up a little there. 25 to 50 knots from the south, and on the other side of the low center, northerlies, 45 to 50 knots. Lighter here over the southeast Bering, and then 20 to 25 or 25 to 30 around this low on the north side. As far as turbulence goes, North Gulf Coast, moderate chop, and considerable eastern Aleutians and western Aleutians.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, not a whole lot different, although it continues to fill in up here in the open area, still a open water area there southeast of Wrangell Island, but that kind of shifting westward and this filling in, and also Polina beginning to open up there near Barrow due to the persistent east winds. They're going to continue for the next couple of days, and looks like a little bit of expansion here along the Yukon Delta coast to a certain extent there, and that may continue here for the next several days. On to the coastal water forecast. East winds 15 knots on the south coast. The central coast tomorrow, south 20 knots, but farther up the coastline there, small craft advisory, southerlies at 30 knots, and then back down to 20 knots farther north. Lynn Canal, north 15. Stevens Passage, southeast 15, 3-foot seas. Small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, winds out of the southeast 25 knots with 10-foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, southeast 15 to 20 knots here for the central and southern inside waters, north 15, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and southeast 20 to 25 knots on the north coast with 12-foot seas, south 15 to 20 knots on the south coast, but the seas higher at 13 to 14 feet. And Prince William Sound tomorrow, lose the gales you had today and go with small craft advisories, east 25 knots, seas 6 feet, and lighter winds for the North Gulf Coast, east side there, 25 knots out of the southeast, and the western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, looking at east winds tomorrow at about 20 knots, and gales here for Kamishak Bay, northeast 35, seas 10 feet. Small craft advisories, Cook Inlet, northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 9 feet south of the Forelands. 30-knot winds continue here, southern Cook Inlet on Tuesday with 7-foot seas, 20-knot winds north of the Forelands. Kamishak Bay, northeast 30 knots, east 30 knots for the Barren Islands, and small craft advisories for Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast with east winds for the North Gulf Coast and 9 to 10-foot seas, northeast winds for Prince William Sound. Northeast 25 for Shelikof Strait tomorrow, east 15 along the east side of Kodiak Island, and southwest of Sitkinak, northeast 15 knots, west 25 knots there on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, top side there, southeast 15 and northeast at 20 for Bristol Bay. And that'll kick up to about 30 knots on Tuesday here for Bristol Bay with small craft advisories all the way down from the northeast. 25 to 30 knot winds all the way to Cape Sarachev, and then northeast 30 knots here on the Pacific side of the peninsula, 13-foot seas. And up as you approach southern Kodiak Island there, they become easterly, roughly from Castle Cape on up to southern Shelikof Strait there. East winds 30 knots for Kodiak, or the east side of Kodiak Island, northeast 30 for Shelikof Strait. Fox Islands tomorrow, Unalaska Island southeast 30 knot winds and gale force southeast winds for 35 knots for Unmak Island. South to southwest 40 knots for mostly Atka, then the direction shifts around here northwest from about Adak on out at 45 knots all the way to Shimei, and at two seas just under 20 feet. 30 knot winds Kiska to Shimei for Tuesday, 40 knot winds from Old Kiska on down to Adak, 30 knots on the Pacific side, or the Bering Sea side of Atka Island, and Unamak Island north to northwest, 25 to 30 knots and 20 to 25 knots for Unalaska Island, with seas in the lower 20s on the Pacific side of the islands. Southwest coast tomorrow, light winds out of the east, 15 knots, and east 15 knots also for St. Lawrence Island, and the Pribilofs, St. Matthew Island, northeast 15. Going on to Tuesday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northeast 25 knots there with 5-foot seas. And then small craft advisory south of Nunivak Island here for northeast winds at 25 knots. Yukon Delta coast and St. Matthew Island, northeast at 15, and north 20 for the Pribilof Islands. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast tomorrow, brisk wind advisories, east winds 30 knots, about 20 knots for the central and west side, coming down to 15 knots from Wales all the way down, or from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. And for Tuesday, 20 knot winds, Wales to Cape Beaufort out of the northeast. And let's see, brisk wind advisories here, all of the Arctic coastline, east 30 knots, gale warnings for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and brisk wind advisories for the central and west side for 30 knot winds there, 35 knot winds in the east. And for tonight, not much wind up there by comparison tonight, but it'll be pretty fair over the central and northern interior. Chance of rain increases over the panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.